Like to call to order the Rutherford County School System regular work session, January 22nd. Pledge of Allegiance done by Ms. Frances Rosales.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's take a look at the agenda. Do we have any questions on the regular agenda? There are no questions. Let's take a look at the consent agenda. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda? There are no questions. We will look at E. Am I correct?
So E, we have a voluntary termination of bus contract 316, Austin Stockton.
Any questions or comments?
It's actually part of the consent agenda as well.
Is it?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry,
I
Austin
see that
Stockton.
now. We're just kind of, floating around. We don't have public comment, and I don't have anything yet for Thursday, okay? We're now looking at Rutherford Proud, which
We will do Thursday.
we will be doing Thursday, okay? Guest speaker.
So we have Dr. Ralston for the first of two informational sessions. I got asked today what day is Dr. Ralston talking, and I misspoke because I thought it was Thursday. It turns out it's both days. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So Dr. Ralston
got a
is
lot
going
to
to
say.
talk to us, give us an update on our end of the second quarter behavior and discipline data review. And again, this includes all students, not just special education, even though she's a special education coordinator, so please just remember it's everybody, not just special ed.
Thank you. So this is just the end of the second quarter update, as I did at the end of the first quarter. I have put everything together into an end of the semester. And there's some really exciting numbers to show you tonight. So I've been looking forward to this presentation a lot. So when you get the first slide, it's the discipline referrals. You'll see it broken down by elementary, middle, and high. These are all the office referrals that have been submitted into Skyward for this first semester. So that's not just a quarter, that's a full semester. If you'll notice, the elementary numbers are 1724, middle is 3126, and high school is 2871. Interesting enough, you'll see violent offenses, threat of violence, and other. The highest number of offenses was actually skipping a class in high school. Elementary and middle school, it was misconduct. So it was not the violent offenses or the threats of violence that were the highest number. Okay, we can go on. These are your restraint reports from the first semester. I also put the totals from 22 and 23 down there at the very bottom. You will notice that there were 126 restraint reports in last year at this time, and this year there are 122. We've gone down 4 from then, but we've upped the amount of students we have. Move on to the next one. This is the OJIs, which is the on-the-job injury. And we talked about this before and last year, that on-the-job injuries sometimes are due to breaking up a fight or helping a student who is in crisis, but it also could be somebody falling on the stairs or falling off the sidewalk, as I told you I have done. So when you look at this, 21-22 is at the very bottom. We had 102 at this time that year. In 22-23, we had 104, and this year we have 89 on-the-job injuries. That's a dramatic decrease. You'll also notice that there were several more in September last year. There were 42 on-the-job injuries in September of last year, and there were 17 this year in September. So there you go. I think that's pretty positive. And the last set of data I wanted to show you was the reset room data. This is the data that I'm so excited about. This is where you guys gave us those positions, those behavior interventionist positions, and we placed them in lots of our elementary schools. So you'll notice at the very beginning in August, they're kind of getting used to that reset room. What are we doing here? What's happening? It's de-escalation. It's kind of just calming down. Then you'll notice that it starts to take shape, and our students are using it more and more. And when you look at that, it's not students with disabilities that are the only ones using it. It's all students. It's even adults, as I have witnessed in some buildings, who go in there and just calm down for just a second. The administrator call at the bottom is very interesting because there were 1,432 instances where a student went into the reset room just to take a break, take a minute. And when they if they're still super escalated, that's when an administrator is called. Out of those 1,432 instances, only 349 involved an administrator. So what you guys did is you provided a behavior interventionist into those buildings, which allowed our administrators to continue with daily business, and it allowed our students to have that person they trust to talk to. As you can see, that's one of the most used and successful de-escalation strategies, was talking to a trusted adult, which a lot of times was that behavior interventionist, and then they go back to class, and they're in that tier 1 instruction with their peers. Another big strategy that was used more often than not was quiet time. Just that constant input of information is hard for kids to take that in, understand it, and continue working. They get overwhelmed, right? So they need to take a second. And that quiet time that was provided to them in these reset rooms has been so valuable. So the end of this presentation is that, just to tell you thank you so much again for those behavior interventionist positions and those reset rooms. We are seeing the benefits of those. Thank you. That's okay.
I'm so
I've
sorry.
known you
Dr.
for a while.
Ralston. Yes, I've known you just a little while, dear. I didn't teach her, Katie. Does anybody have any questions to ask Dr. Ralston on this before she sits down? Mr. Tidd?
It's all positive news so far. The difference. One of the things about the reset room, and you mentioned this, it's freed up the administrators, so they're not having to use as much. There's not much loss in that regard, and also it looks like I don't have the. Can we get the slide? Or are you going to send the slide?
I'll send it to you.
Okay, about 25% of the time. Is that roughly how much administrators were called down?
Roughly.
Roughly.
Yes. I'm not a math person. I taught history. But looking at this, yes.
Roughly.
25%.
That seems like very good numbers. A drastic decrease.
It is. It is.
Great to hear.
It's very positive.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
It's exciting to see this data turn around. So the reset rooms, I know we put a lot of emphasis on the elementary schools for this. So are we going to put more emphasis on middle school and high school, or because it's clearly
It's clearly
evidence
working.
that's showing that it's going to work. So are we looking to doing the same thing for middle school and high school?
We have not discussed that yet, but I'd like to.
But I think that'd be great if we can do that in the budget this year. If we can roll this program out into the middle school and high school, and if it's a issue with funding, then start out with the schools that have the most problems with this, and then roll it out as a pilot program, and then see it the following year if we can get the funding to roll it out and throughout the whole entire county for our middle school, elementary, and high school. And so I've witnessed this reset room situation. It's not a situation, but where the kids have gone to the room and they use it to kind of calm themselves, and takes them a little bit to get there, but at least they have that space to do that. So I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'm glad that we have that. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Ralston.
I think it's safety next.
Got to find it. Number 9.
Number 9 is Safety, Tab 2. Captain Barry Hendrickson is requested to send at least 10 SROs to attend the 2024 NASRO School Safety Conference in Phoenix, Arizona. Conference is expected to provide valuable insights and training that will enhance the effectiveness of our SROs in ensuring the safety and well-being of our school community. The cost is $20,768, which includes conference costs, lodging, airfare, and food. Rutherford County has been awarded a state-funded fiscal year 23-24 public school security grant. The money is designated for safety expenditures, and proposal is to utilize the funding to cover the cost associated with the training conference. I talked to the sheriff. This is something they used to do, but not having the line items to be able to do that in their own budget, this was a good show of partnership for us to be able to do, and he supported us doing that.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have enough, I know we have a lot of schools, but 10, do we have more money to send maybe half of our SROs?
Let me talk to the sheriff and see, because I know that they have other duties in the summer that he may not want that many out. So let me check with him and see.
Because see, we
I'm
would
not
be
against
taking them from their jobs, so
Yeah,
we have to
not
be,
against it.
yeah,
Because
but
it's
you
in the
got to
summer.
work that out with,
Because it's in the summer. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Ms. Barton.
Ms. Rosales?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my understanding is that they've been trying to get their SROs for the conference for a while now, and the request was from Captain Barry to send 10 SROs. And so if we can send more, that'd be great, and I'm sure they'll be really happy to do that, but they've been really wanting to do that, and they really asked the board if we can help out, and so I'm really pleased that we can do this for them.
Anyone else? Thank you. Number 10, legal.
Legal, first, we have out-of-county transfer. Board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. A student was expelled for consumption and distribution of illegal drugs on school grounds. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools' recommendation is to deny admission, and you guys have the file and are welcome to ask Ms. Ridley if you have any questions.
Yes, please direct those to Ms. Ridley. Number 2.
All right, number 2, the board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system. Under discipline, the student is remanded for excessive discipline infractions. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. Recommendation for this student is to admit and place an alternative school due to the length of time that their original suspension was. It was only a set number of days.
Questions? To ask Ms. Ridley, give her a call. All right, resolution.
All right, so number 11 is a resolution on charter school funding. So we, of course, just a little background, with TISA, the money was supposed to follow the student, and it does follow the student, but it follows the student a year later. And so the investment in TISA has been great for our district, but it is a struggle for districts that are growing. We are educating those students basically without funding for an entire year. I've been talking to the Department of Education last week because we are new to having our own charter schools. When a charter school opens, that funding is given to them in 5 different installments at different points, the first one being the beginning of the year. And so we will have to allocate funding for those students at the very beginning, even though we don't get funding for our own new students. The best example I knew was Beatty Elementary. Beatty Elementary, we will open, and there very well could be a charter school that opens at the same time. We will not get funding for our students that attend Beatty Elementary until the next school year, but students that are attending a charter school, even if we authorize them, would get funding from us that very next month. And so that's where this resolution came from. We've tried to do what we needed and have authorized our own, and just trying to get the things to be equal for us from a funding aspect. Mr. Reed?
Yeah, so this resolution, so the funding under TISA does not match the Tennessee Charter School law, as Dr. Sullivan said, and so we are required to fund charter schools, so we'll have to come up with the money out of our budget to fund charter schools, even though we've not received it from the state yet. So we'll get reimbursed, but it'll be a year later. So it's a timing issue with respect to the funding. So what this resolution does, it says, whereas the timing of funding for the state of Tennessee for students under TISA for students is not aligned with the date under the Tennessee Public Charter Schools Act by which authorizing LEAs are required to make payment to charter schools authorized by the LEA. And whereas, due to the timelines not being aligned between TISA and the Tennessee Public Charter School Act, LEAs will not have received funds for students from the state by the deadline by which the LEAs are required to pay charter schools. And whereas LEAs will be required to find monies to pay for charter school students for an entire academic year before the LEA will receive any funding from the state for said charter school students, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education that the board requests that TISA and the Tennessee Public Charter School Act be modified to provide that the state shall provide funding to LEAs for the state's per-student funding for charter school students to be no later than the date by which LEAs are required to pay charter schools for each student. And this is something to be sent to the state legislators, the Department of Education, and the Governor's Office to request this change.
Comments?
Ms. Bratton?
Mr. Tidwell?
I think this makes sense. It sounds like we're having to carry out a loan for the students that are not even going to our public schools until we finally get paid for it at the end. I think this is fair.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Reed. We've kept you busy with the resolutions.
Yes, lots of resolutions.
Did you write that one? Oh, okay. Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Ms. Bratton?
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question. Dr. Sullivan, under the BB formula, I know that they made it, I know that districts got the numbers adjusted. So when it came to a new school, was the formula funding the same?
Next year as well.
So this is not a change from the old, this is what historically has been the
Yes.
same?
Yep.
Okay. But this is impacting us more now because we have the introduction of the charter school.
Yeah, both.
That's where the change came for us. Okay.
In March, both charter schools should tell us what their anticipated enrollment is, and we are going to have to send our funding for that
Yeah.
portion and budget for it. Even if a student comes from homeschool or from a private school, we have to send the funding. Sure, we'll get re-upped the next year, but
Yeah.
we're basically sending a loan not knowing if there are students or not.
Yeah, and I can share this publicly. So you and I were in a conversation with the governor's top policy advisor who sets up a lot of the policies, what's going to come down the pipeline, especially what the governor's getting ready to deliver in a few weeks. And we made him aware of the problem when it came to the reimbursements, that there is a delay when it came to the addressing the change of enrollment within the school year for the new enrollees. So they are aware. Well, we've made the governor's office aware of the problem of not getting funding in appropriate time. So this is something to tag on to that conversation and keep pushing it. So if all board members that are here, that will be something that I will really encourage every single one of us here as elected officials to call our state delegation and make appointments to even meet with the governor's senior advisor, because that's where the poll is going to be at.
Thank you. Anyone else? Number 12?
Meeting got canceled for this month,
Yeah,
so
it
I just
did.
got that
Sure did.
notification.
Got canceled today.
Yep.
Number 13?
All right, number 13, were you able to send that to John? All right, John, can you pull up what Brian Runyon just sent you? It happened while you were in here, or while you were doing that, so Brian just stepped out to do it. So we're going to go over something I know a couple of y'all have heard about, is our audit finding. So we did have an audit finding this year, so something, just, you guys know I believe in transparency, so I wanted us to discuss it. You have two documents in front of you. Let's go to the one that says Exhibit K11, and it has 225 at the bottom. So the audit is a 330-something page document, and so then you get an overall just basic page that says, and I think our audit finding was deficiency in budget operations is what it said. So we wanted to expound on that just a little bit further of what it actually meant. Brian, you want to go through Fund 177 real quick? So that's the page that has 225 on it.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so Fund 177, and I assume you all both have the exhibit K11 in front of you. I'm just going to point out a couple different things because I don't want to get too far in the weeds with this because I will confuse everybody. If you look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth column over where it's underneath budgeted amounts and it has final on there, and look down at the very bottom, you'll see $227,277 that's in the negative. That is where our audit finding came from. I do want to point this out above that where it says budgeted amounts. So that's a budgeted number. What had happened is at the very end of last year, we ended up doing a budget amendment against our fund balance in there, and that's what caused us to go into a deficit of $227,000. That was an oversight on my part and also an oversight on the county's part because they didn't catch it either. So what that basically is saying, we budgeted $227,000 in a deficit, but if you look at the fourth column over where it says actual revenues / expenditures on a budgetary basis, and look down at the very bottom where it says fund balance as of June 30th, there's $5.8 million in there. So that we could have, if we had the time, that's one of the big issues. If we had had the time to go back, we could have budgeted an additional $227,000 in revenue or, took $227,000 out of expenditures. But I say all that to say this, is we ended up in a $5.8 million surplus basically in that fund. So we always had cash flow. We never went into an actual deficit with our cash flow. It's just the budgeted amount that actually went into the deficit. And with the comptroller and their auditors, the way they look at that is that's a deficiency because we didn't catch that on, with the limited amount of time we had left at the end of the fiscal year to be able to do anything with it. But it's not actual. That's the key thing that me and the county finance director wanted everybody to understand is it's not actual numbers, it's your budgeted numbers, which I've always said, budgeted numbers are estimate. So you don't ever know 100% where you're going to come at, but that will not happen again at this end of this year because we will leave it the way it is, budgeted as is, no amendments that need to go through as far as that goes because we've got everything budgeted where we need to. So that's 177. Any questions?
All right, the next one is the one, and the way it is worded, is salaries exceeded appropriations in 18 of 96 salary line items of the general purpose school fund budget, ranging from $84 to $1.6 million. So I wanted to go over what that means. So what is hard for us, the way our payroll is set up, is that, and we'll go over what all these mean in detail just so that you hear questions. Biggest thing that I wanted to point out is you have this sheet in front of you that has the colors. It's in front of you right there. Overall, our budget at the very bottom, we spent 95% of what we had allocated. So you'll see that there's a $24 million to the good of what we budgeted. And what did we actually come up in a...
We had $13.4 million that rolled into fund balance.
Yep, so we were budgeted last year in a $28 million deficit. We had $13 million actually run into fund balance. So it's not that we didn't have cash or the revenue. It was basically a budgetary and a timing issue. So what we run into is when we do payroll, our teachers get paid June 30th ends our fiscal year. You have June 20th as the last teacher payday, but at the end of June, the county goes ahead and pulls, we call it accrual. They go ahead and pull all payroll for June, July, and August. And I know that may not seem like a lot, but just dividing that amount out, you're looking at $14.5 million roughly a month for payroll just out of that very first one. So when we look at it in June, you're looking at 146, 147 million. You don't look like you're going to go over $172 million. You guys know we tried to budget was down to the penny. This wasn't, Brian and I going through this wasn't a budget we created, so we're doing the best that we possibly could on a budget we didn't create, but no excuses for that. You will see that the very first one, 71-100, we budgeted 172 million, so if you'll just follow along, it's on line 9 up there. We budgeted 172 million. We actually spent 174 million. So there's that $1.6 million deficit. You are not allowed to go over any salary line item. So you'll see that we're over by less than 1%. What is frustrating as a numbers person, not an accountant, is you'll see in green, we in this line had $6 million left over. And so it's not that we didn't, again, have cash, it's that we didn't have the cash in the right spot to be able to.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
In the account itself, we had 6 million, not the line. We were over
Oh,
the
and that's
line.
in 141,
So,
70.
yeah, in the 71-100 account, we had $6 million left, so we only used 97% of that budget, is what that's showing in green, so.
I'm confused, so why, if we've got money left over, why are we negative?
Because it's not assigned to that salary line item. So that's where we do our cleanup budget amendments. We basically had a couple options to fix this. When we find out what our that we're going to be over, this is why I told you guys in July at our law conference, we we're going to have a finding, because I knew we went over in this. We have the option to leave it as is, which is what we chose, because there's money to pay it. We have the option to not pay people, which is not an option, because we have money there. Or we have the option for us internally to go ahead and move money ourselves without school board and without county commission approval, which is also an audit finding. So we chose just leave it as is because we had the cash to cover it.
We just got audited thing, however, we're not really negative.
No.
We do have the.
Yes, in every one of these, yep. And so how do we fix this for the future? We're going to put extra money into these just to cover it. And you guys, we've tried to not over budget because you don't want to over budget anything. But I'll use attendance as another example. So we have attendance, you'll see you go over, it's 3 down. So we went over $2,766. The way we budget is each person's salary to that exact amount of what they're going to spend. But if somebody retires and they have vacation days, we have to pay out the vacation days. And so we're just going to budget extra money into these, just 1% or 2% into each one, just to cover it so we don't have. Is that going to inflate our budget a little bit? Yes, it is. So we'll probably have bigger ending fund balance again. But it just shows you kind of where those are. And so some of them you see all the way down through. You have a big one that is a psychological personnel is 137%. This also includes summer school. So the way state funding works is we get state funding for summer school. We draw it down in May, and then we hope and pray we have enough meetings in time to get it amended into the final budget from the school board, health and ed budget, and full commission. So again, we'll just put more money into those because every one of these you'll see is in the green. And overall, our entire budget again was 95% with that extra. So happy to discuss any of those. Really, the best wording I know how to say is that it's not a cash flow issue; it's just a timing issue. And we're always going to struggle somewhat with that based on the way that we have to have so many levels of approval to move money around. But we'll just put extra money into it to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but if you put more money into it, it is inflating the number. I mean, I get what you're having
Yeah.
to do that because it's kind of wonky the way they're looking at it. But, this is interesting.
It's one of those that you
Make them fix it.
you just take it, things in place to not happen again, and do the best we can with it.
Because we're not really, like you said, we're not over, we're not negative.
No, but it's
We
clear.
haven't even spent the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's clear that
But
salary
these
line items can't be over, so
living
we'll
in.
address that.
So,
I really like the one for $18. That was my favorite.
$18. I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. This was not your budget?
No, but we operated
Okay.
with it last year.
Okay, that's
So
just
we
what I
operated-
wanted to know.
we
You didn't create this?
We operated this budget, so Brian and I should have been able to catch it, and I'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
We operated the budget the entire last year, so I'll take the fall for it, make sure it doesn't happen again.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So there are this is just a finding, there's no fees or any,
Now, we've sent in, I'll tell you, our corrective action plan, so we have to send in a corrective action plan. Yeah, that pulled out, I can find it real quick.
so,
It's not fun, but it's something that we need to be transparent about and talk about. Here's our audit response. So basically prepare the corrective action plan. Brian Runyon, Finance Director, person responsible, Brian Runyon, Chief Financial Officer, specific corrective action plan. We currently review all actual versus budgeted expenditures on a monthly basis for exceeded appropriations and will pay any additional stipends or bonuses at earlier dates. This will allow ample time to amend budget a year and if needed to be ensured this will not happen again. Anticipated completion date, the present, it's currently being done. I know the text that some of our people got was the board approved a bonus that the county commission did not approve. That's incorrect. We had hard to staff schools last year. And so hard to staff schools got paid out in May, and the May, along with all the different accruals, is what threw that line item over. So that's not an accurate statement. You could pick any of them. You could put summer school through that line item over anything.
So I think if I do a follow-up comment, I believe Mr. Young was on the board. He may be the only one that was on the board the last time we had an audit finding, and it was over, to my memory, it was over the simulator at Siegel. And that when we had to, yes, obviously there's findings that we don't want to have, but that one we had because we had to buy a certain simulator to go with the curriculum, and we could not bid it out. So we took an audit finding on that one. And there was no way to cure that one the way we have cured this one.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Mr. Runyon? Sorry, I know I was going to let you talk, but then I just talked, so sorry.
The main thing I want to point out is that overall, there was, in 141, there was 1.9 million approximately that of the line items we were over, a total of $1 million. But if you look at that over if you look, John, I know he's already taken it down, but there was $501 million budgeted in there. That's a 0.004%. That was the amount that we were over by. But as you can see up there, we only spent 95% of our budget. So that's really, it's a budgeting issue, not an actual cash flow issue. It's similar to what I was saying about 177, but it's one of those things that we've got oversight over now, and it's not going to happen again this year, for sure.
Ms. Bratton. I mean, this is a little bit of a frustrating thing because it's like we're getting punished for being more transparent. By not over budgeting and saying we need much more than what we actually need, we try to bring it down to the dime, and then we're just a fraction over. We've got plenty of extra money, budgeted correctly, final budget, like you said, a $24 million surplus, that would say $13 million, go back to fund balance. Great, healthy budget and planning, and yet, this audit finding, which I'm not against audits or anything like that, but it just makes it appear something different than what it is. So I'm glad the information's being shared out today.
Madam Chair. And I'll report this to Health and Ed tomorrow too, because I expect to get questions there and on budget the following week, so.
Okay, number 14, Director's Update.
All right, number 14, Director's Update. While we've been in here, I know you all know, but we will be on a 2-hour delay tomorrow. I will tell you how quickly you can change your mind. I told James Evans last week that I hate 2-hour delays, and I never want to do a 2-hour delay, ever, because to parents, a lot of them just rather you close because of the disruption that causes. We want in every intent to be able to go to school tomorrow, so that is our plans to do a 2-hour delay. We'll make a decision by 6 o'clock if we need to make any other modifications. We realize there are definitely some roads that may not be the condition we want them to, and so we will have bus driver discretion and parent discretion. If it is not safe to send your kid to school, don't send your kid to school. It is very similar the way we look at it from an illness. If 96% of our schools are in for attendance and we have the flu going around, we don't close school. And so the same type of thing for roads. The largest majority of our kids will be able to get to school tomorrow, but if you know you live on a hill or you live in a subdivision that is icing on its way there, we'll excuse the absence, it's principal discretion, and we can move on. But we need our kids in school if it is safe. So that's all I've got.
Good.
And I hate 2-hour days, and I'm sorry.
I know you've said that.
I told you that last night. I said, I'm not doing a 2-hour.
You told me that last week when I told
Here
you
I
that
am
it would be
doing
a 2-hour
2-hour
delay. Ms. Rosales, you're going to wait till Thursday night? Okay. General discussion.
You have something?
Mr. Tidwell?
The portables, any update at all?
We are in the process of writing an RFP so that we can send out two, one for the prefabricated and one for the built locally. I did find some additional information. I had 2 meetings with Brian Lewis with our CTE. He was able to provide me some drawings that I think Dr. Sullivan sent out. He also gave me some budget information on how they were doing things in Clarksville. One thing you need to keep in mind, they're building singles and we're buying doubles. So their budgets are half what we're buying. So we're going to bid out singles and doubles. And we're going to try and get a price for a single and a double that can be built here locally and also relocated. So we'll leave it to them how they meet all state and federal codes.
When do you think we'll hear next back?
I expect that we'll have something out in about 2 weeks, and it'll probably take 2 to 3 weeks to bid it. So I'd say it'd be 5 to 6 weeks.
Also want to thank, I thanked him last time, but Mike Walls is our maintenance director, and it has been nonstop. I know that most of the county was closed. Their staff were not. You're going to hear we're a huge district. We have, I'm sure we'll continue to have pipes that bust. Probably since I've been sitting in here, we've had pipes bust somewhere, but our crew's been great, and they've cleaned up everything. So when that happens, we'll continue to clean it up, and I know that while most of everybody was off, maintenance was not. So please share that with your team.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. We appreciate you. Anyone else?
Ms. Martin,
Yes, ma'am?
I know we've talked about the CMTE project. What's an update on that?
We're going to try to put it in 177 and just do it ourselves so that we don't have to do any loans.
Okay, do we need to bring that as a board agenda item to vote on?
It'll be part of this year's budget.
It'll be part, okay, wonderful, great.
Anyone else?
Ms. Bratton, I got one more.
Yes, Mr. Tidwell?
Mr. Reed, I know you'd mentioned about new attractive land. Do we have any update on that?
We were talking about doing a tour last Saturday, which obviously the weather conditions did not allow for that, and it was a good decision not try to go forward with that on last Saturday. We're looking at possibly this Saturday at 10 in the morning, if the board members can do that. I hear it may be a lot of rain coming in Saturday, so whether that impacts our plans or not, we'll have to watch that and just see how the weather comes together for Saturday. But the plans are now to try to do a tour Saturday at 10.
Perfect.
For this Saturday at 10 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay.
If we don't have to swim.
I don't love the weather forecast.
No.
4 to 6 inches of rain with a stream through it.
4 to 6 inches of rain, yeah.
Is there a pond there?
There's a creek.
There's a creek. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, just bring your bathing suit.
So it'll depend on, so we'll just have to watch the weather and see how it develops and make a call.
Make a call.
Game day decision.
We'll make a call on Friday.
Yeah.
Could someone else make it?
We get
I made it last time. You want me to make it again?
a drone.
Can we get a drone? It's not a bad idea.
We sure can. Good idea.
Plan B.
Plan B.
Plan B. Hey, out of the box. That's good. Anybody else? Ms. Darby?
Move to adjourn.
Ms. Maxwell?
Second.
We are adjourned.